41 stores walk out of Chicago, and the mayor's answer is to blame a racist system. Let me show you what they don't want you to see. The city of Chicago has quietly become the testing ground for one of the most expensive experiments in modern American politics. You leave businesses alone to get robbed blind, you tell prosecutors to look the other way, and then when every last store folds its tent and vanishes, you stand at a podium and call it somebody else's fault. That is the Brandon Johnson playbook, word for word. And right now, it is playing out in real time across every neighborhood in the third largest city in America. Here's where it gets crazy. The stores did not leave quietly. They left because they ran the numbers, and the numbers said they were never going to win. And if you think this does not affect you because you live in Florida or Tennessee or anywhere that is not Chicago, stay with me, because what happens in Chicago does not stay in Chicago. The people who can no longer shop in their own neighborhoods are moving, and they are moving to your city. Let's start with what the Illinois Retail Merchants Association has been saying out loud for years, while the mainstream press politely changes the subject. According to the association's own president, Rob Carr, Chicago continues to be, in his words, an epicenter for organized retail crime, not shoplifting. Not a teenager pocketing a candy bar. Organized retail crime. According to reporting from Crain's Chicago Business, the Chicago Police Department tracked shoplifting in the first 10 months of 2024 that was 46% higher than the same period in 2023. Read that again. 46% in 1 year. And per a report from the Council on Criminal Justice, reported shoplifting in the first 10 months of 2024 was higher than in all 12 months of each of the preceding 6 years combined. Every single year before 2024, going back 6 years, had less retail theft than just the first 10 months of last year. That is not a trend. That is a collapse. And here is what Rob Carr said about what he's watching on the ground. People are stealing entire cartloads of merchandise, and they are getting, according to him, a lot more confrontational. Store employees are getting hurt. And advocates tracking the damage to Illinois businesses say retail theft is costing Illinois businesses nearly $2 billion every year. $2 billion. Drained out of the economy while the mayor talks about investment plans. But wait until you hear what happens next, because this is the part nobody is talking about. Before the stores started going dark, there were warnings. Big, loud, impossible to ignore warnings. Walmart opened its first Chicago location almost 17 years ago and, according to the company, never once turned a profit on a single one of those stores. Not one profitable year in nearly 2 decades. Walmart, one of the most ruthlessly efficient retail operations on earth, could not make the math work in Chicago. So in the spring of 2023, 4 Walmart locations shut down on the same day. Gone. Then a Whole Foods on the south side closed. And what did Mayor Brandon Johnson do? He called it a problem of historic disinvestment. According to his own office's statement, at least 6 grocery stores closed on the south and west sides over a 2-year window, and his administration's response was to announce that Chicago would become the first major American city to explore building a city-owned grocery store, a government grocery store. That was the plan. And get this, by early 2025, that plan had already collapsed too. Because according to reporting, city officials could not find a qualified operator to run the thing. So the city that drove out Walmart, Whole Foods, and half a dozen other grocers because it could not control what was happening inside those stores, then tried to open its own store and could not pull that off either. This is what policy failure looks like when it compounds. Every solution creates a bigger problem. But here is what you need to understand about the scale of what is happening. The magnificent Mile Michigan Avenue, the crown jewel of Chicago retail, the street that used to be a destination for the entire Midwest, is sitting with roughly 1 million square feet of empty retail space out of approximately 3 million total. A third of one of the most famous shopping streets in America is dark. State Street downtown is lined with vacant storefronts where a thriving shopping corridor used to exist. Businesses are leaving at a rate faster than new ones are opening. That is not a recession. That is a policy outcome, and it connects directly to Brandon Johnson. Now here is the piece that mainstream media buries in the 17th paragraph if they mention it at all. Brandon Johnson said in 2020 that defunding the police is not, in his own words, a slogan, it's an actual, real political goal. And according to reporting from Illinois Policy, he later described looting as an outbreak of incredible frustration and anguish tied to what he called a failed racist system. The man who is now mayor of Chicago went on record defending mass looting as a form of political expression. He did not say it once. He said it clearly on the record at a panel for a group called Police Free Future, where he also said the city needed to remove itself from, quote, state-sponsored policing. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that this is the ideological foundation underneath every store closure, every boarded-up window, every food desert on the south and west sides. The philosophy came first. The consequences came second. You cannot publicly defend looting as righteous anger and then act shocked when companies decide the math no longer works. Here is the contrast that tells you everything you need to know. While Chicago's Magnificent Mile is 1/3 empty, while 4 Walmarts closed in a single day, while the South Side loses grocery store after grocery store, cities like Nashville and Jacksonville and the suburbs of Dallas are having the opposite problem. They have too much retail demand and not enough space to put it. The people and the businesses are moving to where the rules are enforced, where a smash and grab gets prosecuted as a serious crime, where a store owner does not have to watch someone walk out with a full cart and know that calling the police is a waste of time. For years in Chicago, the threshold to charge retail theft as a felony was $1,000. $1,000. That means you could walk into a store, load up $600 worth of merchandise, walk straight out the front door, and the law treated it as a minor offense. That policy was set by the previous Cook County State's Attorney, Kim Fox. It took until late 2024 for a new prosecutor, Eileen O'Neill Burke, to drop that number to $300, which is where state law already had it. For years, the city operated a catch-and-release system for retail thieves, and the businesses absorbed the losses until they couldn't. According to the Cook County Sheriff's Office, store owners frequently stopped even bothering to report crimes because they had made, in the sheriff's words, a business decision not to prosecute because they believed nothing would come of it. Think about what that means. The crime environment became so normalized that the victims of crime stopped expecting anything to happen. They just built the losses into their operating costs until the operating costs made the store impossible to run. And this is the part where it connects directly to your life, even if you have never set foot in Chicago. Those closed storefronts do not just mean a longer drive to the grocery store. They mean sales tax revenue that disappears. And when the sales tax disappears, the city's budget bleeds. According to the mayor's own office, Chicago was already staring at a projected budget gap of over $500 million, $500 million. And the administration's response was not to cut spending on the programs that were failing. It was to look for new revenue. It was to look at what could be taxed, what could be borrowed, what could be restructured. The people paying for this experiment are the residents who stayed, the small business owners who didn't have a national headquarters to relocate to, and ultimately, the taxpayers of Illinois more broadly. This is the part where someone always says, well, the stores are closing everywhere, this isn't unique to Chicago. And that is technically true. Nationally, more than 15,000 stores are expected to close this year, up from roughly 7,000 in 2024. There is an e-commerce shift happening everywhere. But here is the thing. Every other major city is losing stores to Amazon and Shein and Temu. Chicago is losing stores to Amazon and Shein and Temu, and the fact that a crew of people can walk in and steal thousands of dollars of merchandise on a Tuesday afternoon with near total impunity. That is the Chicago variable. That is the thing that is not happening at the same scale in Indianapolis or in Charlotte or in Columbus. The organized retail crime rings are not choosing Chicago randomly. They are choosing it because the enforcement signal, for years, was that the consequences were low. According to Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul's own statements, there is an organized crime aspect to much of today's retail theft, and the people arrested are often being used as low-level mules, at the bottom of a larger criminal enterprise. These are not desperate people shoplifting milk. These are coordinated operations. And according to law enforcement, the proceeds fund other criminal activity, including narcotics distribution. This is a supply chain. It has logistics, and for years, Chicago gave it room to operate. Now the bill has come due. Every vacant storefront on State Street is a receipt. Every closed Walmart on the South Side is a receipt. Every family that now has to drive 45 minutes to find a grocery store is holding a receipt. And the man at the top described the behavior that created all of those receipts as an outbreak of frustration. Here is where it gets real. What is Brandon Johnson's answer to the food desert crisis his policies helped accelerate? According to his administration, the plan is now something called a public market, a city-backed space to sell basic groceries while supporting local farmers and small vendors. The city-owned grocery store proposal fell apart, so now it's a public market. The private sector, with its billions in capital, its supply chains, its distribution networks, walked away. The answer is a public market. Meanwhile, in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis signed legislation making organized retail theft a priority prosecution. Texas has its own organized retail crime task force. Tennessee passed criminal justice measures specifically targeting smash and grab operations. These are not talking points. These are policy choices, and they produce measurable outcomes. Businesses expand in those states. Businesses contract in Chicago. The people leaving Chicago's south and west sides for the suburbs of Atlanta and the outer ring of Nashville are not making a political statement. They are making a rational decision based on where services actually exist. And the tax base follows them. If you want to keep seeing the stories the mainstream press refuses to touch, subscribe New Investigations every other day, and the next one is going to be bigger than this. Chicago did not have to become this. The policy choices that produced this outcome were made deliberately, defended publicly, and doubled down on when they failed. When a mayor goes on record calling looting an expression of righteous frustration, he is telling you exactly what comes next. The stores already heard him. They left.